The story of Julian Cross. Julian Cross stood by the vast windows of his suite at the Zenith Tower in Boston, idly swirling a glass of 30-year-old scotch. The city lights twinkled beneath him, resembling a field of scattered diamonds. Yet, his thoughts wandered far. Another successful merger. Another billion-dollar deal sealed. Still, the triumph felt hollow. At 42, he possessed every richness money could acquire. Yet the emptiness that had shadowed him for the past 7 years seemed to deepen with each passing day. The soft ping of his phone captured his attention. Another communication from the board, lauding him for the recent acquisition. Julian set his drink on the table and adjusted his custom Brioni suit with precision. The acclaimed restaurant, the Azure Grill, awaited eagerly. At least he could savor a quiet dinner before tomorrow's press conference. The elevator descent was silent, broken only by the soft hum of machinery. Julian examined his reflection in the gleaming brass walls, noting the silver threads weaving through his dark hair at the temples and the stress lines carved around his eyes, despite his routine spa visits. 7 years of immersion in his work had taken its toll. Yet it felt preferable to dwelling on his losses. The maitre d' promptly located him, leading him to his familiar, isolated corner table, which offered a breathtaking view of the Boston Public Garden. "Would you like your usual Merlot, Mr. Cross?" Julian nodded, his gaze wandering over the evening's menu. Yet, his mind was elsewhere. At that moment, he caught the sound of laughter that seemed to freeze everything around him. A noise that resonated in his history, something he had fought to erase from memory. He abruptly lifted his head, scanning the restaurant with keen eyes. There, 3 tables away, sat Serafina. Serafina, his ex-wife, looked just as he remembered, but in a way that radiated even greater beauty. Her honey-blonde hair shimmered in the warm light, her smile as bright as the day they met in law school. However, it wasn't merely her presence that sent a chill through him. Seated on either side of her were 2 children, a boy and a girl, likely aged 6 or 7. The boy's solemn demeanor and dark hair mirrored his own, while the girl's delightful laughter was unmistakably Serafina's. The similarity was unmistakable. Julian gripped the table edge. His knuckles whitened as the revelation hit him with the force of a tangible impact. Twins. Yet he had no awareness the twins existed. The sommelier glided in with the Merlot. Yet Julian barely paid attention. Thoughts spun in his head. 7 years had passed since the divorce, recalling the moment of their final month together and Serafina's peculiar actions just before she left. All his previous assumptions about their separation abruptly transformed, uncovering a raw, gut-wrenching fresh truth. The girl, his daughter, turned slightly, her profile so recognizable that it sparked a profound ache in his chest. Then the young boy looked up. His gaze met Julian's from across the restaurant. Those eyes, his eyes, widened with curiosity, as if sensing a connection he couldn't yet comprehend. Serafina turned toward where her son was looking, and Julian watched all the color drain from her face. The wine glass in her hand trembled slightly, the only indication that she was as unsettled as he was. In that instant, Julian Cross, the individual who wielded authority over billion-dollar companies with just a signature, experienced an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. 7 years of meticulously constructed barriers crumbled as a torrent of questions surged through his thoughts. How could she hide this from him? What granted her the authority? And above all, what actions would he take in response now? The unseen years and the truth. The following moments stretched like warm taffy as Julian and Serafina maintained a wordless standoff across the restaurant. Memories surged within him, recalling their last exchange 7 years prior. her tears, his bewilderment, and the stack of divorce papers that lay heavy between them. "I've reached my limit," she had declared. "Our desires diverge." Now those words carried a deeper meaning. Serafina leaned in to share a secret with the twins. Then she rose with an air of serene assurance. "Chloe, Gabriel, please finish your desserts. Mommy needs to have a brief conversation with someone." Julian watched her adjust her navy silk dress, approaching him with the same resolved elegance that persisted in his memory of their courtroom confrontations. Some things remained constant. "Are they your children?" It wasn't a question. His voice emerged with an unexpected harshness, the feelings he struggled to identify threatening to engulf him. 7 years, Serafina. 7 years spent on your journey. Gone. He watched her compose herself, straightening her shoulders as she invariably did, before presenting a challenging legal case. "They are yours indeed." Serafina met his gaze head-on, her chin raised defiantly. "Chloe and Gabriel, they really will be 7 next month?" She hesitated, selecting her words with great care. 2 weeks after I filed for divorce, I discovered I was pregnant. You were in Singapore, finalizing the Carrington merger. The merger you mentioned that would finally establish Sterling Dynamics' presence in the industry. Julian experienced every word as if it struck him with force. "So you truly believed I shouldn't be informed? That I forfeited my right to be their father?" His meticulously maintained exterior began to show signs of wear. "My God, Serafina, I've been out of the loop on everything." First steps, first words, the commencement of academic ventures. "You made your decision long before you knew about the twins," Serafina interrupted, her voice tinged with lingering pain. 3 forgotten anniversaries, spending Christmas alone, as you dedicated yourself to work throughout the holiday season. The day I lost my father, you sent flowers signed by your assistant, as you were too busy to attend the funeral. She inhaled unsteadily. Upon learning of my pregnancy, I was met with a decision. I chose to shield them from the affections of a father who would invariably prioritize his empire above everything else. Julian prepared to voice his disagreement, but the words faltered and fell silent as he caught sight of the twins framed in the restaurant archway. Chloe meticulously cut her chocolate cake into perfect squares, mirroring the way he approached his own confections. Gabriel was absorbed in what looked like a substantial chapter book, his concentrated demeanor reflecting the seriousness found in Julian's childhood photographs. "They're brilliant," Serafina murmured, her eyes following his line of sight. "Chloe is already 2 grades ahead in mathematics. Gabriel possesses reading skills, aligning with high school standards, and aspires to pursue a career in corporate law." A subtle smile adorned her lips. He expresses a desire to assist organizations in making positive contributions to the world. The pride in her voice was undeniable, stirring something deep within Julian's chest. "What brings you here, Serafina?" he asked finally, wrenching his gaze away from his children. The offspring of his lineage. The phrases lingered, unfamiliar and distant in his thoughts. The Zenith Tower presents a setting that is anything but ordinary. He hadn't intended to accuse, yet old habits proved hard to shed. "Gabriel emerged victorious in the state chess championship," she replied. "This dinner was his reward. He selected the restaurant personally after discovering the chef's profile in a magazine." She paused. "It mirrors your approach, constantly delving into research and strategic planning, well in advance." The burden of everything he had overlooked weighed heavily on Julian's shoulders. Chess tournaments, mathematical accomplishments, literary achievements, a myriad of fleeting instances that were meant for him to observe, to revel in. The frustration he sought to direct at Serafina continuously dissipated into a deeper, agonizing feeling. Remorse. "They'll be in the city for 3 days," Serafina mentioned softly. A robotics competition will take place at the Institute of Technology, IT, tomorrow. She smoothed an invisible crease from her dress, a tic he vividly recalled. I understand you may harbor a strong dislike for me right now, and I fully acknowledge you have every reason to feel that way. However, they find joy, Julian. They are treasured. They genuinely reflect your essence in the most wonderful ways. The ways I fell in love with before business took over everything. Just as Julian was about to respond, Chloe's voice resonated across the restaurant. Mom, Gabriel's acting strange about his food once again. The unmistakable frustration in her voice echoed Serafina's. It clutched his chest. Serafina closed her eyes for a moment, and he could observe the silent struggle unfolding on her face. Go, she murmured softly. This dialogue is far from over. Serafina nodded, gracefully turning back to her table. Julian watched her effortlessly resolve the minor disagreement, remembering how she had once calmed tensions in high-stakes negotiations with that same reassuring presence in the solitude of the nook. Julian retrieved his phone, swiftly canceling the press conference scheduled for tomorrow with a series of quick texts. After 7 long years, Sterling Dynamics found itself in a position of anticipation. Truth and remorse. The revelation. Julian continued grappling with his thoughts as Serafina approached once more, her expression cautious. They've been asking about you, she murmured softly. Gabriel noticed the similarity. He has a certain insight, doesn't he? She twirled her wedding ring around her finger. No. Julian noticed suddenly that her mother's ring had moved to her right hand. Certain habits lingered despite the end of a marriage. What did you share with them regarding me? What can you tell me about their father? The question had been burning in his thoughts since the initial jolt of realization. Serafina's eyes dropped to the floor, only to lift once more, full of resolve. Mostly the truth. You were exceptional, ambitious, and we shared a profound love for one another at one time. Occasionally, adults face difficult decisions. She took a moment, gathering her thoughts. They are aware that you manage a significant company, though I never referred to Sterling Dynamics directly. Gabriel completed a school report on sustainable business practices last month. He utilized your company as an example. Unbeknownst to him that it belonged to you, the irony of his son unintentionally delving into his creations left Julian feeling a tightness in his chest. Do they dislike me? The question emerged softly, hinting at a fragility he seldom showed. Serafina's expression turned a shade softer. They don't dislike you, Julian. It's impossible to harbor hatred for someone who was never truly known. Her words were not intended to wound, yet they penetrated with an undeniable force. They have a keen interest in you, it seems, particularly now that they've caught a glimpse. Chloe has already discerned the reason behind your repeated glances toward them. Julian ran his fingers through his hair, a familiar nervous habit from his law school days that he thought he had outgrown. I'd like to meet them, Serafina. Properly. Not as a mere passerby in a restaurant, but as... He still couldn't articulate the word father. It felt like a designation he hadn't truly earned. Serafina began to explain, but a soft voice behind her intervened. Mom, could he be him? Gabriel was there. The chess championship medal hung around his neck, his dark eyes filled with intensity and curiosity. Chloe followed closely behind, her energy bubbling just beneath the surface, ready to burst. Serafina's meticulously constructed barriers began to crumble as her children, along with his children, awaited an answer. Julian stood still as Serafina knelt to meet their gaze, her professional demeanor cast aside in favor of a parenting instinct. Absolutely, darling. We introduce Julian Cross. He is, she looked at Julian, a lifetime of intricate feelings exchanged in that glance. He is your father. Chloe, always eager to act as her mother had pointed out earlier, stepped forward. You truly had no knowledge of our existence. I deduced it from the way you looked at us earlier. Your expression mirrored the one Mom wears when she is genuinely astounded. Just like that time we were accepted into the school's advanced program. The bluntness of the question, presented with near-naive insight, almost unraveled Julian entirely. He too knelt, aligning himself with them in the same way Serafina had. "No, I didn't know," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "However, if I had known," he looked at Serafina, his eyes silently seeking her approval to continue. She gave a barely perceptible nod, and he redirected his attention to the twins. "If I had been aware of your existence, the course of events would have taken a different turn." It wasn't blame directed at Serafina, but rather an admission of his own shortcomings. "For a time I strayed off course, fixated on the wrong notions of achievement, yet upon witnessing you two right now," he found himself needing to take a moment to compose himself. "Your sheer existence surpasses any accomplishment I could have envisioned." Gabriel observed him with a focus Julian saw reflected in his own gaze. "Mom mentioned you assist businesses in improving," he said thoughtfully. "You repair what is damaged and restore it to its proper function." The boy traced the metal of his chest with a thoughtful touch. "Do you believe certain broken things are beyond repair?" The question resonated deeply, its meaning reaching the very core of Julian's being. He was about to respond when he caught sight of Serafina wiping away tears, attempting to conceal them from the twins. In that moment, he perceived not only his ex-wife, but a woman who had carried the weight of their shared history in solitude for 7 long years. Julian met his son's eyes, fully aware of the significance of this moment. The most crucial matters can always be resolved, Gabriel, through perseverance and the courage to take that initial step. He cast a fleeting glance at Serafina before continuing. The key lies in identifying what truly matters before the moment slips away. Chloe, who had been unusually silent, suddenly exclaimed, "We're staying at this hotel too. Mom booked us a suite due to Gabriel's issue with his chest." "What floor are you currently on?" "We are currently on the 12th. Her enthusiasm cut through the dense emotional haze like a sunbeam piercing darkened skies. "Chloe," Serafina cautioned softly. Yet Julian noticed the faint curve of her smile. His daughter's talent for easing tension brought back memories of Serafina in their early days. "I am actually on the top floor," Julian responded, observing the way Chloe's eyes widened. "The city view is truly remarkable." He paused for a moment before saying, "Would you all be interested in seeing it? Everyone here?" The final segment was directed at Serafina, a gesture of reconciliation reaching across 7 years of silence. The penthouse promise. Serafina's internal turmoil was vividly reflected in her expression. "What are your plans for the press conference scheduled for tomorrow?" she asked finally. "I noticed the advertisements." "I canceled it," Julian stated clearly. The astonishing act resonated deeply with Serafina. Julian Cross was known for never canceling press conferences. "Is that possible, Mom? Please!" Chloe was practically bursting with energy now. "I'm curious to explore the aesthetic of a penthouse, and Gabriel can demonstrate his chess strategies." "I'll be there," Julian interrupted. "I desire to experience all of it, evaluating the competition, every aspect of it." He looked at the twins, their eyes glistening with barely contained excitement as they observed the unfolding exchange. "Is that all right with you as well?" "Absolutely." Chloe leaped slightly on the balls of her feet. "Your assistance in calibrating the servo motors would be greatly appreciated. I found information regarding your company's work in precision engineering, and I am currently facing challenges with the arm's rotation calculations." Gabriel, ever the pragmatist, was already retrieving his competition notebook. "Tonight, we will demonstrate the robot's fundamental functions, unless you have too much on your plate." "I have all the time in the world," Julian said with conviction. settling down next to his son. As he performed the action, he met Serafina's eyes, noticing a mixture of caution and optimism in her gaze. As they headed toward the elevator, Chloe unexpectedly intertwined her delicate fingers with Julian's. "Did you truly create your entire company on your own?" she asked. Gabriel, embarrassed but proud, showed Julian the worn article about the sterling dynamics he had saved. When Julian opened the door to his penthouse suite, the room was instantly reformed by the essence of his new family. "You can see our old apartment building from here," Chloe exclaimed. Julian, realizing Serafina and the twins had lived nearby all this time, felt a pang of profound sorrow. Gabriel took his place at the chess table. "This is a truly exquisite set," he commented. "It belonged to my father, Arthur Cross," Julian clarified. Chloe asked, "Mom says you work too much. Is that why you dedicate so much time to your work? To try and experience that joy once more?" Julian looked at Serafina, acknowledging the truth in his daughter's profound observation. "Achievement doesn't equate to happiness. I came to understand that lesson far too late." "The competition commences at 11, Serafina announced finally. "Their team is called Double Trouble Robotics." Julian smiled at the perfect fit. He watched Gabriel fold the worn article about the sterling dynamics back into his pocket, realizing his son had been quietly longing to follow the same path. Chloe's tablet, which slipped from her hand, revealed a photo of a youthful Julian and Serafina at their law school graduation. A moment of pure, shared happiness. "I have a meeting room reserved at the IT tomorrow morning," Serafina announced. "The children are set to perform their final robot testing, if you were inclined to do so." "I'll be there," Julian committed immediately. "I desire to experience all of it." He looked at Serafina, recognizing the hope in her eyes. They faced a long journey ahead, filled with years of pain to confront. Yet, witnessing the joy on Gabriel's face and hearing Chloe's enthusiastic discussion of servo motors, it felt like the dawn of something truly valuable. The slow ascent to partnership. The night ended not with grand declarations, but with the quiet dignity of a truce. Julian walked Serafina and the twins, Gabriel and Chloe, back to their suite on the 12th floor. Before saying goodnight, Gabriel insisted on showing Julian the Double Trouble Robotics team logo, a carefully sketched image of two intertwined gears. Julian knelt once more, meeting his children's earnest gaze. "I'm immensely proud of both of you," he said, the word proud feeling heavy and true in his mouth. "I'll see you at the IT tomorrow, sharp at 10 for testing. Don't be late." "We won't, Father," Gabriel replied, the term now settling comfortably on his tongue. Serafina waited until the children were inside before turning back to Julian. The caution in her eyes had softened, replaced by a deep exhaustion. "Julian," she said quietly, "I appreciate you canceling your conference, but tomorrow is about them. It's not about us. Whatever you're planning, it needs to start slowly." He nodded, respecting the boundary she drew. "I know, but my plan starts with showing up. For the first time in 7 years, I know exactly what I need to acquire, Serafina, and it has nothing to do with mergers or hostile takeovers. It's time." He reached out, not to touch her, but to gently push a stray strand of hair from her cheek. He withdrew his hand instantly, honoring the space between them. 7 years of work created a vacuum. "Now I have to fill it," he said, his voice husky with commitment. "And I want to start by knowing the little things. I want to know Chloe's favorite color, and why Gabriel always orders his food strange." Serafina gave a small, weary smile. "Chloe's is deep emerald, and Gabriel, he has a sensitivity to textures. You'll learn." She paused, then took a chance, the same kind of calculated risk Julian admired in business. "Good night, Julian. I'll see you in the morning, ready to face the double trouble you never knew existed." "Good night, Serafina. Thank you for not letting me walk away a second time." The robotics competition. The next morning, Julian was waiting at the Institute of Technology, IT, a full hour before the 10 o'clock meeting time. He felt the familiar, nervous energy he usually reserved for closing billion-dollar deals. But this time, the stakes were profoundly personal. When Serafina and the twins arrived, they found him reviewing the Double Trouble Robotics blueprint on a tablet, the details of precision engineering already fascinating him. The morning was a whirlwind. Sasha, energetic and focused, immediately put him to work, drawing on his corporate knowledge of efficiency to help calculate the robot arm's rotation tolerances. Gabriel, quieter but intensely observant, watched his father's engagement, his cautious hope slowly turning into trust as Julian debugged a complex line of code for the search and rescue robot. When the competition began, Julian sat next to Serafina in the bleachers. They weren't holding hands, but their shoulders brushed, a small, grounding connection. They cheered together, a unified front, as the twins successfully guided their robot through the challenging obstacle course. The pride on Serafina's face was a genuine, unrestrained joy that Julian felt deep in his own chest. "They did it," Serafina whispered, her voice thick with emotion as the twins were awarded their medal. "They worked so hard." "They get their drive from you," Julian replied honestly, "and their brilliance from both of us." That afternoon, Julian didn't return to Sterling Dynamics. Instead, he took the twins and Serafina out for their celebratory dinner at a simple, family-friendly restaurant that Sasha chose. He listened patiently as Gabrielle explained the nuances of the Sicilian defense in chess and watched as Chloe ate her pizza, making sure to avoid the crusts due to her texture sensitivity. He was no longer the all-powerful CEO. He was just father, a title he knew he had to earn every single day. The vacuum in his life was beginning to fill, not with wealth, but with the chaotic, vibrant, and irreplaceable sound of family. The new rhythm of commitment, the robotics competition, was more than just a victory for Chloe and Gabriel. It was a turning point for Julian and Serafina. Julian didn't just attend. He invested himself. He even used his corporate jet to fly the entire Double Trouble Robotics team, 2 parents, 2 kids, back to their home city, turning a necessary trip into an impromptu celebration. The biggest change came the following week. Julian didn't immediately move back into Serafina's apartment, recognizing that space and boundaries were crucial for trust. Instead, he initiated a formal, co-parenting agreement, presenting it to Serafina not through lawyers, but over coffee. The terms were clear and uncompromising. Weekly schedule. Julian committed to being physically present for 3 school nights and every weekend, regardless of Sterling Dynamics' demands. Shared calendar. He insisted on a shared, visible calendar for all school events, medical appointments, and extracurricular activities. Chess, math club, robotics. No more forgotten events. Financial autonomy. He established a substantial, untouchable trust fund for the twins' education and future, but made it clear that Serafina maintained complete financial autonomy over their day-to-day lives. No lies. The foundation of their partnership must be absolute honesty, especially regarding the twins' questions about the past. Serafina was stunned. This wasn't the distant, transactional man who bought gifts instead of giving time. This was a man committing to the work of fatherhood, the small victories. Their life quickly settled into a demanding but rewarding new rhythm. Julian was a fast learner. He learned the weird food rule for Gabriel, carefully portioning food textures so his son would eat without distress. He became Chloe's robotics co-pilot, eagerly spending evenings helping her optimize the mechanical arms, treating the project with the same seriousness he would a corporate acquisition. He even started delegating more authority at Sterling Dynamics, realizing that his empire would not crumble just because he missed a few late-night calls. His executive team, initially shocked, grew to respect his new, fierce focus. One afternoon, Serafina found Julian asleep on the floor next to Gabriel's bed, an open chess strategy book on his chest. He looked exhausted but utterly peaceful. She paused at the doorway, not with anger or suspicion, but with a quiet, undeniable hope. That night, she finally found the courage to ask the question that had haunted her for 7 years. "Julian," she said as they stood in the kitchen, the twins asleep. "That day I filed for divorce. Were you really going to walk away from me completely, even if you hadn't believed the lies?" Julian sighed, the exhaustion clear in his eyes. "Yes," he admitted, his voice low and raw. "I was so lost in the achievement that I had forgotten the joy. I was already gone, Serafina. That's the real betrayal. The truth is, you didn't hide them from me. I was already hiding from them." His raw honesty, devoid of self-pity, was the final piece that began to truly mend the broken trust. The reconciliation wouldn't be easy, but by choosing to live in the truth and prioritize the small, everyday efforts, Julian and Serafina were slowly, painstakingly, building a new kind of family, one stronger than the empire he had nearly destroyed. The open road ahead, the family settled into the new rhythm, the meticulously planned shared calendar, the late-night strategy sessions for Double Trouble Robotics, and the genuine, unhurried dinners where Julian learned to identify every nuanced texture that bothered Gabriel. He was actively present, a stark contrast to the CEO ghost of the past. One Friday evening, a few months after the chaotic restaurant reunion, Serafina found Julian not in the twins' room, but in the kitchen. He wasn't on a call. He was standing by the counter, meticulously measuring ingredients for Gabriel's favorite simple soup. "I found a recipe that addresses the texture issue," he said, without looking up. "A 3-step puree process. It seems highly inefficient, but the results are favorable." Serafina leaned against the doorway, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. "You're applying the Sterling Dynamics efficiency model to soup." "I'm applying the cross-family commitment model," he corrected, his voice serious. He finally looked at her, his eyes warm but humble. "We're not just fixing what was broken, Serafina. We're building something new, from scratch." "I know," she replied, "and it's exhausting." "It is," he agreed. "But it's real." He didn't ask her to forgive the 7 years of abandonment. He didn't ask her to love him. He simply offered his commitment to the life they were now sharing. "The twins are asking about Christmas," Serafina said, changing the subject, her tone cautious. "They want to know what our tradition is going to be this year." The question of tradition, the first test of merging their separate lives into a single future. Julian set down his spoon. He walked over to her, stopping close, but not touching her. "I don't know what our tradition is yet," he admitted. "We'll have to invent it. But I promise you, it will be one where no one is forgotten, and no one is alone." Serafina met his gaze, and in his eyes, she saw not the calculating CEO, but the earnest young man she had fallen in love with, now matured by pain and repentance. She knew the past was a weight they would always carry, but for the first time, she truly believed they would carry it together. She simply nodded. "Let's invent it then." The love story of Julian and Serafina was no longer about finding a way back to the past. It was about the challenging, beautiful, and uncertain process of inventing a brand new future.